Frank, I'm so appreciative that you're willing to sit down today and talk about your mother and her Alzheimer's diagnosis and your family and how that has affected everyone. So I'd like to start, though, with going back a bit and have you tell me a bit about your family so that those that are listening will know.
Sure.
Siblings,
Yeah.
mom and dad.
My mom and dad are both from Puerto Rico, and came to the States. My father's a physician, and so really he started his career here in the United States. And I have a twin brother, a younger sister, and both my younger brother and younger sister live close to my mom and dad. They currently live in Texas, and then my twin brother lives in Madison. So, it's as we get further into this, I think that the distances are some difficulties that in essence have challenged our family as it relates to my mom's issues. So.
Why don't we go to that point now, because it's a very important one that a lot of families face.
Yeah, it's my brother and sister live this real time, and Henry, and it was my twin, and I live this in a very delayed fashion. The four of us spent a tremendous amount of time, obviously with mom,
With your mom.
And so for us to see what was technically, I guess they call it cognitive decline.
Yeah.
We saw little signs of it, but I don't think any of us really put one and two together for a while. And once that moment hit, like I said, then very dramatic for all of us. And there are times that you think back and it's like, what could we have done differently or said or whatever.
You mentioned the moment when you knew. Mm-hmm. That's something that I'd like to know about.
Yeah, like all of us, I think, even myself, as we get older, you think about short-term issues, and they seem to fade from you, and then they come back. But as we think back on all of this, is that my mother used to write a lot of notes to herself, and we just thought, gee, mom was just so busy, right, taking care of 4 kids and doing what moms do, that at that point, it really, it's like, okay, whatever. It's her way of keeping track of life. But in reality, it probably was a very big indicator of things to come.
Yes.
So.
The dental appointment or the medication or the...
a little Rolodex by the phone,
yes.
Messages on calendars, but the same message probably in her purse, and,
Yes.
yeah. So, again, when you're in the moment, you don't really think about it.
Right.
Once this horrible disease begins, then you go, wow. And then you start thinking about yourself.
It takes over a lot.
Yeah. So.
When you say thinking about yourself.
Yeah, you just, how does it affect the family dynamic? It's, I don't know any other way to describe it, but a crappy disease. And, is it going to happen to me? Is my wife Trish and my daughter Rosie going to have to live through this? And of course, none of us really know what's happening inside. We say she had cognitive decline all the way now to basically Alzheimer's. Are there things she understands and just can't verbalize? Is she just completely...
Don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. What is she thinking inside? And she can't tell me. Maybe she wants to tell me. Maybe she wants to say something to my dad. And she's never going to have that opportunity again. This is where the journey, kind of really began for the family, and I'm sure it's the same with most families with this is, okay, so what do you do? Who do you go see? Now again, got to think back that, I said my father's a physician. So then all of a sudden we had an extra dynamic thrown in there. Not only was dad husband, but dad also wanted to play physician. And so in this journey, I think that there were times that I think either he didn't want to recognize things because he was her husband, or is her husband, and he knows a lot medically about what some of the current treatments do physically. And I'm not sure he was willing to subject my mother to some of that. So,
Where did it leave you for?
I'm sorry?
Where did that particular decision leave the four of you children?
You come from a Latin family. You respect what your father says to a point. But, we're all grown adults now. And, at first it was, okay, you probably know what you're talking about, and da-da-da-da-da. But, once, there was the introduction of medication in my mother's life, it was, this, it's not working. I'm going to make the decision to take her off it. Or that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
Versus, and, like everything else, the neurologist that's treating my mother, is obviously a friend of my father's. And so sometimes you feel like you're beating your head against the wall. And, I'm not saying that there's bad practice of medicine here. There isn't. It's just the way it played out. And still plays out today. That, there are things that I think we see as children, or the children of my parents, and that my father isn't necessarily going to either recognize or doesn't want to recognize. We could push back and say, well, gee, what does the neurologist say about it? What does the social worker who was involved, in that type of care, of course, that they normally partner in that regard. And it's, but my sister living there for a while, after a while, willing to push, but Henry and Frank in Wisconsin, we don't see that, so therefore we're have been a little bit more cautious in regards to how we press my father on certain issues.
How has all of that gone?
Not so well.
Pressing.
The pressing?
Mm-hmm.
I think we both probably realized that we should have pressed more earlier on.
Mm.
Doesn't say that the outcome is going to change. Remember, I go back to, I always tell them, ultimately at the end of the day, it's your decision. But, if you feel that that's the best thing for our mother, then so be it.
Tell me about your mother today.
Lost. I saw her in September. And my cousin from Puerto Rico was up, her brother's son. And, there's always the parts that are still there. I mean, sweet, wanting to do everything for everybody and all that, stuff that moms do.
Does she know you, Frank?
She has, in the last year, confused my brother and I, my twin brother and I, a fair amount. I'm not saying that she doesn't know me, but, there's some question, and and that's always an observation because, when this last visit when my cousin was there, we weren't sure if she was thinking she was talking to her brother or to her nephew, at times.
What happens to your heart when she doesn't know you?
Oh, I was angry the first time it happened is when my aunt passed away, February 2 years ago. We were in Puerto Rico. And we were at a family gathering afterwards, and she knew that I was her son, but she couldn't come up with my name, but she could come up with Henry's name, and she, I was quite angry. I remember the moment. And my dad's just looking at me and, just kind of, go with the flow.
Did you?
And I did. But then I walked away and, after a while when I had my opportunity, and I was mad. Not at her,
No,
mad at the situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I
But,
understand.
So yeah, no, that'd be a day that'd be etched in my mind till I either end up with Alzheimer's or drop dead, one of the two. I mean, for those who know me, I can have these, I can live in this real world, in other words, very defined things. If I truly knew she didn't know who I was, then I might be able to rationalize that a little bit more. But as we were talking about earlier, does she know? She just can't say it. You never want to say that things are unique, but because they're not. I'm sure anybody who's dealing with this from a family situation has their stories, but the question comes, is ignorance bliss sometimes as it relates to these issues, or really knowing about it in more detail than trying to figure out the what ifs?
What do you think?
I think it's probably better this way.
And this way is?
Trying to understand what this horrible disease is.
As best you can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's our reality. Not going to change. We'll make the best of it. Someday it'll end.
Yes, it will.
And I don't know. Don't know what that'll do to my father.
What does it feel like when I ask you a question like, have you planned for her death?
Yeah, I said I didn't really think about it, but no.
I mean, I was ahead of you, clearly, because you hadn't. When that time comes, how do you think that will go?
Oh, I'm sure like any other death in a family, it'll be very, very difficult. But if I really think about it and try to put a positive twist to it, that this madness will end. Madness will end for her and for my dad. We've got some very close friends here, and and for the most part they do ask, and what's the most important thing is they ask about my mother and they ask about my father.
You've really summarized for us the fact that this is a family disease, and the fact that they ask about your father means that they understand that, which is understanding the whole of what you're going through. I appreciate.
But all that connectivity, I'm sure it happens with all close friends, but again, it's just because of the people that we know that are, and they're all tied to the medical community in some form or fashion. I think they do know, they do understand, they know they can't do anything about it, but they're certainly can be very open and compassionate about it. And they're not necessarily afraid to talk about it because they understand it. May not have lived it, but they understand it.
So your message is that people vary. They could check that out with you, and to be sure to ask about each person.
Yeah.
Not just the one.
Just the
with
one,
the disease.
right? Yeah, because it is. It affects everyone, and especially for the one who's spent the better part of 57 years with this woman. So.
Well, I hear great love and great respect in your family, Frank.
Yeah, we have our moments. We do.
All families do.
But strangely enough, I think it's brought us closer together in many ways, and I think a lot of diseases do that. The challenge will be is when it really, really gets bad is that we remember how to support each other and what our needs are going to be and what my father's needs are going to be at that time.
Have you asked your dad how he'll know when it's time for your mother to be in a different place?
Yeah, I've asked him.
Did he answer you?
No.
Okay.
No. He
was quiet? Or?
Aloof with the answer. It isn't that he's going to just say we're not talking about it. That wouldn't necessarily be his style.
But perhaps saying I'm not ready right now.
Yeah.
But you planted a seed.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about, right? It's just trying to help them.
It is.
And
Anticipate.
And, you know, so he's getting a consistent message in the family. Then, you know, I think there's probably some reassurance then when he has to make that decision that he's making the right one.
And that the children have thought about it too.
Yeah, that, you know,
Yeah.
in essence, we've weighed in. You know, he's been able to weigh that information, and, you know, it's like any physician, you know, they take the data around them, try to take the emotion out of it, and make a decision.
And that's what he's doing.
And that's what he does. And I think that's how he copes with it, which is fine, as long as he listens.
It's good you know him as well as you do.
It's a sign of a good father.
Yes, it is.